All right, let's jump into this deep dive. And we're going to be talking about the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal. We're breaking down an episode of the American Scandal podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And this one is a wild ride. The Astros went from being the laughingstock of baseball, the Disastros, as they were called, to World Series champions. But then the whole thing gets overshadowed by these accusations of cheating. So were they brilliant innovators, or were they just cheaters?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is a complex story. And, to understand it, you really have to start with the architect of the Astros transformation, Jeff Luhnow.
Yeah.
He brought a completely different approach to the game than what had been done traditionally.
Right. And a lot of this was inspired by Moneyball.
Right, Moneyball, exactly. The book that really made everyone rethink how to build a winning baseball team.
So how did Luhnow apply those principles in real life?
Well, he really looked at finding undervalued players.
Yeah.
See, traditional scouting relied heavily on gut feelings and subjective assessments, And Luhnow dove deep into the data. He was looking for those stats that others overlooked. Things like on-base percentage, which the Moneyball argument was it was actually a much better indicator of a player's offensive success. But of course, this data-driven approach ruffled some feathers.
Oh, I bet.
The old school scouts felt threatened, and traditionalists within organizations pushed back.
Yeah.
So his early years with the St. Louis Cardinals were marked by this kind of constant tension between the old way and the new way.
Sounds like he really needed a team that was ready to just completely embrace his vision. And I guess that's where the struggling Houston Astros came into play.
Exactly. They were at rock bottom. And Luhnow saw this as an opportunity to just build from the ground up without any constraints from the old way of thinking. He came in with this radical 5-year plan.
Okay.
And gets this. Part of the plan was to intentionally lose.
Whoa, wait. So intentionally losing, like on purpose?
Yeah. It's called tanking seasons. And the whole goal is to secure high draft picks.
Okay, I don't follow. How does that work?
Well, think of it this way. The worse your record is, the higher your draft pick. Yeah. And with a high draft pick, you get to choose from the best young talent coming out of college or high school.
Gotcha.
So Luhnow was basically sacrificing short-term success for a chance to build a dynasty in the future.
And that's how they earned the nickname the Disastros.
Yeah.
Fans were not happy.
No, they weren't. It was a gamble.
For sure.
But Luhnow was unwavering. He slashed the payroll to historic lows.
Wow.
I mean, in 2013, their total payroll was less than some individual players on other teams.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wild.
It was a bold, some would say ruthless strategy. But it was all part of the plan.
It was all part of a master plan.
Right. And even sports writers like Evan Drellich were picking up on this tension, calling the Astros outcasts because of their radical methods. But the losing eventually stopped, and the young talent that they drafted started to blossom.
And then things get even more interesting. I want to rewind for a second, though, and talk about the on-field strategies. You mentioned Luhnow was all about data-driven decisions.
Yes.
So how did that actually play out during the games?
Oh, it was a complete overhaul of how baseball had always been played.
Wow.
They brought in advanced analytics to guide everything.
Right.
Defensive shifts, repositioning fielders based on a batter's tendencies, incredibly detailed lineup recommendations. All this stuff was being generated by algorithms crunching tons and tons of data.
This is not your grandpa's baseball.
No, this is like baseball 2.0.
So I can only imagine the clash between that hyper-analytical approach and the gut instincts of a traditional baseball manager.
Yeah.
Didn't that lead to some friction with Bo Porter?
Yeah, big time.
Oh, really?
Porter came from a more traditional background, and they clashed constantly. And Luhnow wasn't just a general manager. He was deeply involved in the on-field decisions, even dictating specific in-game moves.
Oh, wow.
Based on his data analysis.
Wow, so he was very hands-on.
Very hands-on. It created this incredibly tense environment.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You have to remember, this was a major culture shift within baseball. Not everyone was ready for it.
Right.
So they eventually let Porter go and brought in A.J. Hinch, who was much more receptive to Luhnow's analytical approach.
So we've got this team built on radical ideas, fueled by data. And now they have a manager who's open to pushing boundaries. I'm sensing this is where things start to get really interesting.
This is where a young intern named Derek Vigoa comes in.
Okay.
And he presents Luhnow with Codebreaker.
Codebreaker.
This database designed to decode opposing team signals in real time.
Wow.
Now, stealing signs has always been a part of baseball, But Codebreaker takes it to a whole other level, using technology to gain a previously unthinkable edge.
Okay, hold on a second. Before we get into Codebreaker, I need you to explain this whole sign stealing thing to me.
Okay.
For those of us who aren't baseball experts, how does that even work? And why is it such a big deal?
Okay, so imagine this. The pitcher is on the mound. Catcher's behind home plate. And they're using a series of subtle hand signals to communicate.
Yeah?
The catcher signals what type of pitch is coming next. Fastball, curveball, slider, you name it. And opposing teams have always tried to decipher these signs to give their batters an advantage. Traditionally, if a runner got on second base, they'd try to peek at the catcher's signs and relay them to the batter.
Gotcha.
You know, it was all part of the game.
Like a cat and mouse kind of thing.
Exactly, within the rules.
Uh-huh.
But with Codebreaker, the Astros were stepping into uncharted territory.
Oh,
They were using technology to systematically decode these signs from the dugout, regardless of whether they had a runner on base or not.
So Codebreaker was a total game changer. But how did they actually use it during games? Did they have laptops open in the dugout or something?
It was more subtle than that and incredibly effective. They set up the camera in center field, focused directly on the catcher's signs, and someone in the dugout would watch the live feed, decode the signs using Codebreaker, and then, get this, they would bang on a trash can to signal to the batter what pitch was coming.
A trash can?
You're kidding? Yep, a trash can.
Really?
It was a simple system, but incredibly effective.
Wow.
It gave their batters a huge advantage. They knew what pitch was coming before the pitcher even threw it.
Yeah.
And remember, this was happening in real time.
Crazy.
During the games in a way that was really pushing the boundaries of the rule.
A trash can. Yeah. Pretty wild, huh?
That's wild. So did anyone else notice this trash can thing? Did other teams suspect anything?
Oh, yeah. They definitely did. In fact, there's this game highlighted in the podcast in 2017 where Danny Farquhar, pitcher for the White Sox, starts noticing this strange banging sound coming from the Astros dugout.
What?
Yeah, and it was driving him nuts.
Oh, I bet. He was convinced they were stealing his signs. But he couldn't figure out how. Because traditionally, teams only relayed stolen signs when they had a runner on second base. You know, someone who could actually see the catcher signals.
Right.
But in this game, there was no one on second base.
So what did Farquhar think was going on? Did he confront them or anything?
Well, he talked to his catcher, Kevin Smith, and they were both bewildered.
Wow.
Farquhar even stepped off the mound a few times, trying to disrupt whatever was going on. But the banging continued.
That's got to be so frustrating.
Oh, yeah. It's super unsettling for a pitcher.
Yeah.
You know, to be out there on the mound, feeling like the other team is reading your mind.
Right.
It creates this atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion, and it really messes with the flow of the game.
So it wasn't just the trash can, though, right? The podcast also mentioned something about smartwatches.
Right. Yeah, they were relaying signs through smartwatches, too.
Seriously?
Yeah, some players would wear these smartwatches. And they'd receive signals on the watches. Just another way to get that real-time information to the batter.
So it sounds like they were always trying to find new loopholes.
Yeah, definitely pushing the boundaries.
Trying to stay one step ahead.
Yeah, the league had rules against using electronic devices to steal signs. But those rules were still evolving at the time.
Right.
And the Astros were really testing those limits.
So how did this elaborate scheme finally come to light?
Well, it took a while. But eventually, the truth unraveled in 2019. Mike Fiers, a former Astros pitcher, blew the whistle.
He did?
Yeah, he went on record detailing the whole operation to a journalist, and that sparked a major investigation by Major League Baseball. And what they uncovered was huge.
So what happened? What were the consequences? Did the Astros get away with it?
Well, there were some serious repercussions.
Yeah.
The league handed down hefty fines and suspensions.
Who?
Both the manager, A.J. Hinch, and general manager, Jeff Luhnow, were suspended and then fired by the team.
Wow, so they lost their manager and general manager. What about the players?
The players weren't directly disciplined, but the scandal definitely cast a shadow over their accomplishments, especially their 2017 World Series title.
Right.
You know, some argue they didn't deserve that championship, that it was tainted by their cheating.
Yeah. I can see that.
Others say that sign stealing has always been a part of baseball, and that the Astros were simply more advanced in their methods.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So did they get away with it? I don't know.
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's really sparked endless debates among fans and within the baseball community in general.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer.
No, sure.
The scandal really raised some serious questions about sportsmanship, the role of technology,
Yeah.
and this idea of winning at all costs.
Right.
It exposed this gray area where innovation clashes with ethics.
Yeah.
And it forced the league to kind of reevaluate its rules and grapple with how to maintain a level playing field in the age of advanced technology.
I have to say, I was so captivated by the Danny Farquhar story.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It really brings the human element to the forefront. It's one thing to talk about algorithms and cameras and stuff.
Right.
But to hear about an actual pitcher standing out there on the mound, feeling cheated and powerless.
Yeah.
That's when the impact of this scandal really hits home for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details and the strategies and the brilliance of it all.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that this wasn't just some abstract game. Real people, real careers were affected by the Astros' actions.
And beyond the individuals involved,
Right.
it really tarnished the integrity of the sport itself.
Yeah.
It makes you think about that fine line between pushing boundaries and crossing them. The Astros, with their data-driven approach and their willingness to experiment, they were definitely innovators in a lot of ways.
For sure.
But were they blinded by their ambition, their desire to win at all costs?
That's a great question.
Did that lead them down this path?
Yeah.
Where they just lost sight of the ethical implications?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Were they so focused on winning a World Series that they forgot about basic fairness?
Right.
Did their belief in the power of data and all their innovative methods, did that overshadow their sense of right and wrong? That's a question that every sports fan, every player, every coach needs to consider as technology keeps changing the world of athletics.
I think it's a question we need to be asking in all areas of life.
Totally.
Not just baseball. Technology is changing the rules of the game everywhere we look. And we need to be mindful of those ethical implications.
Absolutely.
Of the consequences of pushing things too far.
Yeah, the Astros scandal is kind of a cautionary tale. It reminds us that even the most brilliant minds, the most innovative organizations, can make ethical mistakes if they lose sight of their values.
We started out by asking whether the Astros were brilliant innovators or just cheaters. And I don't know that we really came up with a clear answer.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
Yeah, they were innovative. There's no doubt about that. Their data-driven approach, their willingness to use new technologies, those are all part of their success.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, that innovation turned into unethical behavior. They got so fixated on winning that they kind of lost sight of the big picture.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we need to be having these conversations more often.
Definitely.
About technology and ethics and where the line is.
We can't let the pursuit of winning overshadow everything else.
Exactly.
Integrity matters, fairness matters. And as technology continues to advance, those values need to be front and center.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for walking us through this.
No problem.
And to everyone listening out there, we hope this has given you some things to think about. Keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those ethical considerations in mind.
Yeah, great advice.
As we navigate this crazy world. And it's a question that goes way beyond baseball, don't you think? I mean, we see this in other sports all the time.
Oh, absolutely. You think about cycling.
Yeah.
The Lance Armstrong scandal.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he used performance-enhancing drugs to get ahead.
Right.
And for years, he just denied it.
Totally.
Even when everyone was suspicious. Another example of pushing the limits, blurring the lines.
For sure. And even the use of technology in officiating. You look at tennis with the Hawkeye system, soccer with VAR.
Right.
These are meant to improve accuracy and fairness, but they create their own controversies too.
Yeah, for sure. It's this constant evolution, and the rules are always trying to catch up.
Yeah.
The Astros scandal kind of forced Major League Baseball to deal with this head on.
Yeah.
They had to rethink their rules about technology, make it clear what was okay and what wasn't, and really step up their enforcement.
So do you think baseball learned its lesson? Has the sport really changed because of all this?
I think it's definitely had an impact.
Yeah.
I mean, the league is much more careful now about monitoring for sign stealing, and the penalties are way more severe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's just a greater awareness now.
Right.
About the ethics of using technology to gain an edge.
So the Astros scandal, it's like a turning point for baseball, almost a before and after moment.
Yeah, I think so.
Before it happened, there was this feeling that teams could push the limits. As long as they didn't get caught. It was all part of the game. But after the scandal, things changed.
Right.
The lines were redrawn. The stakes were higher.
For sure.
It made people realize that there were real consequences for breaking the rules.
Yeah, and that winning isn't everything.
Right.
You know, integrity matters, fair play matters. And with technology changing so rapidly, those values have to be our top priority.
Yeah, otherwise we risk losing the heart of the game, the spirit of competition. When we started this deep dive, we asked if the Astros were brilliant innovators or just cheaters.
Right.
Now that we've talked about all this, what do you think?
It's tough to say.
Right.
I mean, they were innovative, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Their use of data, their willingness to try new things, those were big reasons for their success.
Right.
But at some point, that innovation went too far.
Yeah.
It crossed the line. They got so focused on winning that they lost sight of everything else.
It's been a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we need to keep having these discussions.
Absolutely.
About technology and ethics. Not just in baseball.
Right.
But in all parts of life.
Yeah, in everything we do.
You know, technology is changing everything so quickly.
Right.
And we need to be aware of the ethical implications, the potential downsides
For sure.
of taking things too far.
Couldn't agree more.
The Astros scandal is a perfect example of that.
A good reminder to keep things in perspective.
It's a reminder that even the brightest people, the most successful organizations, can stumble ethically.
Yeah, if they lose sight of what really matters.
Well, thanks for taking us through this deep dive.
Of course, happy to be here.
It's been a fascinating look at a really complex issue. And for those of you listening out there, we hope this has sparked some new ideas and some important questions. Keep exploring, keep learning, and above all, keep those ethical considerations in mind.
Yeah, some great advice.
As we navigate this ever-changing world.